Hey, everybody, this is Jimmy, and welcome back to another episode of Meet the Candidate series for Cambridge City Council and Cambridge School Committee. Our guest this morning is Burhan Azeem. He is a one-term candidate for City Council already, and he's going to tell you all about where his background, why he's running for a second term, what the city's doing well, what we can improve upon. Please welcome to the show the one and only Mr. Burhan Azeem. Hello, Burhan. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, Jimmy, and excited to talk to everyone
Of
today.
course, of course. Well, it's our pleasure. So tell us, Burhan, you've already served one term. People a little bit about your background, how you even got to run for city council initially.
That was easy. I just had to get 50 signatures, so that part was easy peasy. My name is Burhan. I was born in Pakistan and went to MIT, worked as an EMT here, and then in a company that did some COVID care, at-home care sort of stuff. And ran for city council, and I was lucky that like 2,000 people were silly enough to write me number one, and here I am 2 years later.
So can we get those 200 silly people again? That's the challenge, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So why are you running for? First of all, how did it go the first term, and why are you running for a second term?
The first term went well, I think. It's a hard job. I like to say that we're a city of 120,000 people and at least 200,000 opinions. So you definitely get your dose of, opinions from everyone. But I think we did a lot of good stuff, right? So from the way I think about it is the things that I focus on are the three biggest things for people in terms of cost, which are housing, childcare, and, uh, and transportation. And I think we did a whole bunch of stuff around all of that. Um, and it was also a hard year. We had a police shooting in Cambridge, and even now around the war in Israel, people are very tense, and there's a lot of emotions. And being able to take care of your neighbors and talk them through all the difficult times is a hard job.
Mm-hmm. But you found it obviously satisfying, rewarding.
Yeah, it's deeply meaningful. I mean, it gives you a great excuse to talk to your neighbors, to know everyone who lives around you, and I think that sense of closeness and being able to take care of the people around you is what makes the job worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. So tell us what the city, in your opinion, is doing well, and where do we need work? Where do we need help?
So I think that we're doing well in terms of like tackling all our challenges. In terms of housing, I wrote the affordable housing overlay amendments, which just passed, but also we did some around like more flexibility on like parking because a third of homes in Cambridge, the residents don't own a car, but we were still making them have a parking lot, and so we now give them the option of turning that into a backyard or depaving it and doing all sorts of other stuff around that. In terms of education, we are universal pre-K launching next year and added 170 seats to after school and trying to get towards universal after school is I think something I'm really excited about. And then in terms of transit, I think everyone knows about the bike lanes at this point. But besides that, I worked as the chair of transportation committee, and we're going to have a 35% increase in bus service. Going to try and see if we can work closer with the state on trying to get the red line back on track. But a lot of really exciting stuff.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to parking, so how is that being received? So you're saying that some houses had a parking, what do you call it, a driveway or something, or a parking lot attached to their house. They didn't really want it, so they wanted to create open space back there. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So now we give them a lot more flexibility to do what they want with that space, right? Like it doesn't affect it. If you're using yours, like great, keep it. You don't have to do anything, no penalty for that. But just allowing people more flexibility. And it's kind of important because like roughly like I'm making up a number, but so you get a sense of scale, like 20% of our city's land is like driveways and parking lots. And so it's, really important how we can use that space because, we don't have that much space to go around. So we should use it the best we can.
Right. And how has it been received with residents who need on-street parking that have lost those spaces to either bike lanes or more signage that says no parking here, no parking there? How has that been received? How are the residents reacting to that?
That's a really difficult conversation. I think exactly what you're saying, right? Like a lot of people rely on street
Mhm.
parking, and we're a city that doesn't have that much parking overall, and so I think that people feel stressed. And I think that I can provide the reasons why we thought that trade-offs are worth it, which is that it's also important for people who are biking to like school, like elementary school, or other sorts of stuff, and people trying to get to work to feel safe too. And it really is like we're having an accident where a car crashes into a bicyclist almost every day in Cambridge, or every couple of days, and that's really scary for them. But also, I think that people underestimate the way that even if they're a driver, it's working good for them. Since we started adding bike lanes in the city, 10,000 people in the city have chosen to bike instead of drive, and so there's a little bit less parking in the city overall, but also there's 10,000 cars off the road. And imagine our city with 10,000 extra people driving around and trying to find parking and all that. I'm not sure that's an outcome that people want either. It's a really hard conversation, and we're
Mm.
trying our best to manage a lot of different things.
Well, because 10,000 people are biking doesn't necessarily mean that 10,000 people are not driving. It's not a direct one-to-one correlation. Uh, I would imagine. I mean, right? And so, I mean, it is a difficult conversation. I know you live in the East Cambridge area where a lot of the people have been there for generations, and they come to depend on, parking and on-street parking. A lot of them are seniors. There's the only way to get around. They're not going to drive a bike. I personally am a biker and a car owner, so I do both. So I'm pretty aware of what's going on. In terms of the biking, do you think, what about the enforcement of it? Like, for example, just do you think that the cars and the bikes should be, adhering to the same rules of the road in the city, driving red lights, things like that?
Oh,
Mhm.
absolutely. I think that's really important. Like, I think that, both we have a lot of people crossing red lights, speeding, all sorts of different sorts of stuff from drivers, but also from bicyclists really quite often. And I think that having stricter enforcement in terms of, these are the rules of the road and you got to follow them is really, really important.
Mhm.
And I think it's something I strongly support. We unveiled the new rules of the road that really cramp down on that. And I've been trying to have some more enforcement, especially in the North Cambridge area, for like people crossing on red lights and doing dangerous stuff like that, which is really, really unsafe.
Right. And because I know the primary reason for the bike lanes, which I support, is public safety. But it's dangerous if people are running red lights, and I say this as a biker, I have to reel myself in when I come to an intersection and no one's coming. I go, Jim, you're a public servant. You cannot run this red light. You'll be on the front page of the Herald, you know, bike advocate runs red light. So I hear you.
Yeah.
So there's got to be that good balance. So tell me your top 3 to 5 priorities if you were so fortunate to be reelected.
Yeah, my biggest issue is definitely housing. I run a nonprofit that does housing stuff at the state level, abundant housing. And so trying to do more housing stuff at the local level is always a good thing. Right now, it's really hard if you want to add an extra bedroom, if you want to increase space in your
Mhm.
house, to like be allowed to do that. And so I'd love to give homeowners a little bit more flexibility to like add an extra unit, change around their house without having to go through a special permit, hire lawyers, go through thousands of dollars and 6-month waiting process. So I think that's something I'm really excited for. It's part of a bigger package, which I call like ending exclusionary zoning, which will, you know, fix some of the historical injustices, allow triple deckers to be built around the city, but also give homeowners a lot of
Mhm.
flexibility. And I think that all of those things going together would be a really important stuff that I'd love to do in terms of housing. In terms of childcare, I'd love to get towards universal after school. Adding 170 seats was really hard. And the city manager had just been 6 months into the job at that point, and we had only a couple months to go. So we tried to do what we can, but I'm really excited about the possibilities there. And then in terms of the transit stuff, like I'm really excited about the implementation of more buses and more shuttles
Mhm.
potentially, trying to make it easier for people to go up and down Mass Ave, Cambridge Street, all those places. And as much as people say that we have no place in the MBTA, I think that they've actually been pretty open to conversations in my time, and so I really want to see what we can try to do in terms of just getting people moving along on like the trains and stuff like that as well.
Right. Now, you seem to be very open-minded guy. I think that's a really great idea about the homeowners. I think you'll get a lot of support from people to have more flexibility to what they can do with to add an additional bedroom for a family member or an elderly parent or something like that. And you seem pretty flexible when it comes to listening to the community. Could people count on that in terms of you listening to the input of the community around things like transportation, around things like housing? So there's some flexibility. So things aren't always necessarily set in stone. I mean, you open to that type of input?
Yeah, absolutely. And I try not to, like I definitely have values that I try to live by, but also understand the nuance and the details. Like I think about, we passed a lot of climate legislation this term, but when we were passing it, one thing that restaurant owners reached out to me in particular was like, they just don't think that the technology is there in terms of like going all electric. And I would love to go all electric, but like I really sat down with a couple
Mhm.
dozen like restaurant owners trying to understand the difficulties and their problems, and ultimately, in a 5-4 vote, I decided that we don't need that requirement right now.
Mhm.
And that's a small example just to show you, though, that if like people reach out and talk to me and listen, like I try to do my best by like the community and the people who want to have that conversation, and I'm willing to have my mind changed
Right.
on a bunch of stuff.
Well, you say it's a small thing, but if you're a restaurant owner and somebody's saying that you have to now get rid of your stove and spend a lot of money to replace it with something, that's a big thing. So that's a nice example of flexibility and being willing to listen and to learn. I mean, that's the ultimate in a public servant in many people's view. So tell me, Burhan, where can people find out more about you, and where can they learn how they can volunteer or learn all your positions and all your different on all the different issues here in the city, and where, Burhan, can they make a large contribution if they are so motivated?
Wonderful. So it's easy enough in that you can go to voteburhan.com. You can find my platform. You can donate. You can reach out if you want to volunteer there. It's an easy spot. And then I would just say, we have 3 weeks till the election. So if you like all the work that I've been doing and are a supporter, reaching out to friends, just reminding them to vote and then vote for Burhan #1 are like the biggest things I could ask for at this point. And so, I hope, to whoever's watching, I can get your #1 vote and any friends or any other people in your life as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Burhan, for joining us today. Wishing you the best on the campaign trail. I will see you on the circuit. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jimmy.